Hey everybody, my name is SPAZ and I'm a CD junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to discuss 10 albums that had a huge impact on me as a young listener, and albums that I carry with me inside my head and inside my heart to this very day. And they are in no specific order, and this is the first of many CD Junkie episodes that will focus on this particular subject rather than a specific band. I'm going to start off with the album that really just turned my whole head around in terms of going from somebody who listened to what his parents and brothers and sisters and classmates listened to, an album that I discovered on my own that blew my mind, and it just changed the way that I listen to music. And that, of course, is The Jam. This is The Modern World. This was actually their second album. I think that if I had heard the first album, I may not have been quite as impressed, because being a 14-year-old when that album came out, and being 14 when this came out as well, I may not have been quite as impressed, because it was far more edgy and punky, where this was more refined and melodic, and it's just a fantastic album. This was actually the Jam's second album, and I was a fan of this. I believe that I actually got into it early 78 or of course late 77, because that's when it came out, but I don't think that I heard it until early 78, and it just changed the way that I listen to music for forever. And I'm eternally grateful. I followed the band to the end, and I'm still a huge fan. I don't really follow Paul Weller's solo stuff, but I was a big fan of the Style Council as well. Next album I want to discuss is More of the Monkees. Is this my favorite Monkees album? It might be, but it's right up there with Headquarters and Pisces, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Jones. This is the album that I remember listening to playing the most. It was, of course, the second Monkees album. Came out in 1967. My brother Mike and I were huge Monkees fans when we were kids, and of course, I spent a lot of time listening to this album and the first album. And I think that Headquarters we listened to not quite as much when we were kids, because maybe it didn't have the hit singles on it. But of course we knew all the songs, because we loved the Monkees. But I think that really this is the album that still stands out as the one that gives me the warm tingles every time I see that album cover. Next up, we have Buzzcocks, Singles Going Steady. This was a revelation to me, because of course I'd been into the new wave and the power pop and punk, and this is really where it all combines. I mean, Pete Shelley and also Steve Diggle wrote some amazing songs. In fact, Buzzcocks, I love their albums, I do, but they were best as a singles band, and that's why this is the import version, which I recommend everyone to get, because this essentially has all their A-sides up top and all their B-sides. So these right here are all Buzzcocks A-sides, and these are all the B-sides. This even has singles that came out after the original issue of this album. But it is just glorious, melodic, hook-filled punk. I don't want to call it punk pop, because I don't want people to automatically think Blink-182 and crap like that. This was unique. It still is unique. There's no band like Buzzcocks. Rest in peace, Pete Shelley. But this is an absolute stellar collection. This was actually their first American album, and they had two studio albums that came out in the UK, and then this came out in America. Then they put out a third album that came out in America as well. But the first albums I don't think were initially released in the US on vinyl or cassette. Next up is a gentleman by the name of Peter Bramall. Does that sound familiar? You might know him better as Bram Tchaikovsky. You know, a lot of people call Bram Tchaikovsky a power pop band, but if you really listen to them, they're just a great melodic rock band. Girl in My Dreams, fantastic single that has been classified as one of the great power pop singles of all time, and I do not deny that. But if you really listen to Bram Tchaikovsky, Strange Man, Change Man, it's just a great rock and roll trio produced by Nick Garvey from the Motors, because Bram used to be in the Motors. And it's just great straight ahead rock and roll. And you can find this album in a cherry red box set, which has all three Bram Tchaikovsky albums. Definitely worth your time. Next up, I love the mod scene. To me, the way I've described mod all along is power pop with British accents. Even though a lot of the British power pop bands had accents, it just sort of makes sense, at least back then. But Lambrettas, Beat Boys in the Jet Age. That album is pop perfection. Absolutely stellar, great production, great songwriting. It's upbeat. It's frenetic. It's energetic. It's electric. Just great hooks and a whole lot of fun. This actually is a 2 CD version that contains bonus tracks as well as a second CD that features their second album along with bonus tracks. And if you rush out now, you'll see that there's a quote from me on the back of it. Hararura. Now, the next album I have on my stack, a lot of people might be surprised by this one because I chose this particular album. On my 16th birthday, I received the first Records album on vinyl from my girlfriend at the time because I had seen them on a TV show. It was like Dunker's Rock Concert or something, and they did a couple songs, and I just go, oh my gosh, I need to have that. So she picked up that album for me, and I loved it, and everybody loves it. It's a power pop classic, but I would say that Crashes is the album that really, to me, solidified the Records as one of the truly great bands of the era, because I felt that the first album was fabulous, but there's some songs in it that I would skip over. But this album is Jude Cole right here joined the band, and just every song is great. Even though John Wicks doesn't sing as many leads on this album, Jude Cole takes over. He's got this sort of Paul McCartney-esque type voice, maybe Paul McCartney with a little helium added, but it's just great. It's just power pop. It's a stellar album. This is the reissue that has bonus tracks, so you may want to check that out. Fantastic. This next one is going to be another case of SPAZ. How come you didn't pick the first album? Well, the first album by this group came out. It was played on the radio like crazy. It was accepted by Top 40. It was accepted by the FM crowd. And a couple tracks did get played on the new wave stations and stuff like that. And it seemed to really stretch the boundaries on who liked it, because you were looking at the pot smokers, and they loved the first album by this particular band. And the new wave kids loved the first album by this particular band. But I fell in love. I bought this album the day it came out and put it on, and just, I was mesmerized. That is Candy-O by the Cars. Like I said, I loved the first album, but Candy-O was really the album that made me a hardcore Cars fan, and I remain one to this day. This is the expanded edition with some bonus tracks, digitally remastered. Definitely worth your time. Rush out and get it right now. This next album, people might say, oh my gosh, SPAZ, why did you choose that album? Well, it's the way it affected me. It's the way that I listened to it. It's how many times I listened to it. And that goes to Beatles 6 by the Beatles, of course. Why this album? Well, this album isn't really a legitimate album recorded by the Beatles per se. They would gather together non-album singles and some of the songs they took off of UK albums, and they would cobble together an album. So that's what this is. It's basically a collection of stuff that wasn't released in the US at the time. Stuff all around the same era. But it's just a fantastic collection of songs. This has the stereo and mono versions of the albums. And this is probably, this and the American Rubber Soul are the albums that I played the most as a kid. And definitely this, and Something New as well. But yes, definitely Beatles 6 is an album that blew my mind and remains one of my favorite Beatle albums. Next album, another Liverpool band by the name of Yachts. This is an album that changed my life. But of course, it had this cover, but it was called SOS in the US. But the first Yachts album, with a couple track changes on the American edition, it was one of the bands that I felt was truly mine. I would take my records, my 45s in little bags, and bring them over to my friend's house and play them Yachts singles and play them Yachts albums, and I would turn as many friends as I could onto the band. Like I said, that's what the American cover looked like to this, and it's just great, melodic, straightforward, edgy, hook-filled pop. I don't want to call it power pop. I don't want to call it new wave, because they are truly unique. The layered vocals were unique, and the song ideas and structure. It was fun. The thing about Yachts is there was so much energy, so much fun, and I highly recommend the first Yachts album. But you can't buy it separately, unfortunately. But you can buy all three of these discs in one box, courtesy of Cherry Red. That was my #1 reissue of 2018, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time, obviously. Next album, hey you, don't watch that, watch this. It's One Step Beyond. Is this my favorite Madness album? No, my favorite Madness album is Absolutely. But this is another album that opened up my mind to bands like Bad Manners and English Beat and The Specials. This is a fun album. It's not only is it just ska, it's also, you know, music hall. It's 60s influenced. It's 70s influenced. So much great stuff happening on every Madness album. But One Step Beyond is the perfect introduction. Madness was a band that really didn't know the rules in terms of songwriting and production and arrangements and stuff. They just did it by instinct, and it just came out absolutely wonderful. Madness, One Step Beyond. Now, I know I said 10 albums, but I'm making this 11 album because I saved this one for last. It is LA Explosion, one of my favorite albums of all time. When I was a kid, I didn't realize that a lot of albums that came out in the US were actually licensed from independent labels in the UK. So I really had no idea about independent labels. I just assumed independent labels were like self-released albums. And, you know, if you're not good enough to be on a major label, you must not be good enough. Boy, was I wrong. This is the album that changed my mind. This is the album that made me rethink independent music and music in general, because I just saw this cover and I thought, oh, I like that cover. And so I had to save up for like my next allowance, which was obviously a week or so. So I saw this album the week it came out, but I had to wait until the following week to pick it up. It was just something that was just telling me I needed to hear it. I needed to listen to it. And they didn't have a copy to play over the sound system in the store, so I had to take a chance. And this album, when I put the needle down on the record, I was blown away. Every song was just hook-filled. And I could not believe that I was listening to this and, like, you know, none of my friends knew who they were. Even though they were an LA band. You know, they lived 45 minutes away from me. And nobody I knew who they were at the time. But it just became such an important part of my life that it opened my mind to just buying independent stuff, buying major stuff. Basically, it told me, go with your instinct and love what you love, and don't worry about genres. Don't worry about labels thrown on bands. Worry about how it makes you feel. And this album still remains one of my favorites to this day. Anyway, that's it for this episode of CD Junkie. Those are just some of the albums that changed the way that I thought about music, and I would love to know yours. So please watch out for more videos, because I will be sharing these and more CD Junkie videos, because I've got CDs everywhere. So I appreciate you hanging out. I would love for you to subscribe, to share, to comment, because without you, there's no reason to make these videos. So until the next time, my name is SPAZ, and I'm a CD Junkie.